This week, we talk about a certain sorry state, that Africa is reduced to a begging continent. Why is it that African countries are unable to procure vaccines and yet depend on world's aid and not trade? When Africans asked for COVID shots, they did not get them. Now, they do not want them. They are producing their own versions. Many African countries are long familiar with deadly diseases. Millions fall ill each year with tuberculosis. Malaria kills hundreds of thousands annually, mostly children under the age of 5. Ebola springs up periodically in the Democratic Republic of Congo and now Uganda. And now, monkeypox. But all the time, attention dips when it comes to controlling measures like vaccination drives or campaigns in the continent. Let's talk about the epidemic of inequity on the show. Welcome to World of Africa. I'm Eric Njoka. Tunisia's Islamist opposition leader and Speaker of the dissolved parliament, Rachid Ghannouchi, appeared at a Tunis police station to answer questions over what his party has said are accusations relating to terrorism. Dozens of protesters, including lawyers and political activists, gathered outside the police station to demonstrate against the questioning of Ghannouchi, who has denounced President Kais Saied's seizure of broad powers. Several hundred people in the Nigerian capital Niamey peacefully demonstrated against the presence of the French military force known as Operation Barkhane. Many protesters were also seen praising Russia and waving Russian flags. Senegal President Macky Sall has named a new prime minister, a position he abolished in 2019 and reinstated last year. After July's 10th legislative elections, a presidential decree named Amadou Ba, a former foreign minister, as the new premier of the divided country, 5 days after the return of parliament, which was marked by a series of incidents and carried out under heavy security. And the global shortage in crop fertilizers caused by sanctions on Russia, bad weather, and cuts in export is hitting food producers, most especially in Africa. Now in Uganda, a group of producers is turning to organic products, setting up maggot farms to produce fertilizers more sustainably. The Organic Fertilizer Initiative uses maggots from black soldier flies to turn organic waste into fertilizers. In July, the United Nations Health Agency designated monkeypox as a global emergency and appealed to the world to support African countries so that the catastrophic vaccine inequity that plagued the outbreak of COVID-19 would not get repeated. But the global spike in monkeypox infections has had little impact on Africa. No rich countries have shared vaccines or treatments with Africa, and some experts fear interest may soon evaporate. But why is this the case when it comes to the continent, or rather, this often forsaken part of the world?
In the second week of September, the head of the World Health Organization, Tedros Ghebreyesus, gave a status report of the 2 viruses that have wreaked havoc across the globe. His concern was all about the latest and newest headache, monkeypox.
Meanwhile, the downward trend in the global monkeypox outbreak is continuing. But as with COVID-19, this is not the time to relax or let down our guard. This is the time for all affected countries and communities to keep doing what's working.
The number of monkeypox cases reported globally declined by 21% in the first week of September, after a month-long trend of rising infections. Since the WHO declared the outbreak, over 41,000 cases of monkeypox and 12 deaths have been reported from 96 countries, with the majority of cases from the United States. There was another blurred line in the WHO's report: vaccines to fight the virus. Since the onset of monkeypox, there have been various doses that were administered mostly in Europe and the US. countries that were considered at risk and vulnerable. However, when the cases were reported in Africa, no rich countries shared vaccines or treatments with Africa, something that was alarming. Virologists in the continent lament that the countries in Africa where monkeypox is endemic are still in the same situation. According to WHO's Africa Director, Africa is still not benefiting from either monkeypox vaccines or the antiviral treatments. Doctors in various African countries say the lack of help for Africa was reminiscent of the inequity seen during COVID-19, where everybody looked after their own problem and left everybody else. That forced the World Health Body to act and hastily set up a COVID vaccine hub in South Africa.
So the idea is, although we chose South Africa at the center as a global hub, the idea is to build global capacity, especially in countries, low-income countries, to have their own capacity, so the equity issue is addressed in the future.
Some leaders from the continent also reacted and put pressure on the developed world to listen.
The inequalities and disparities we are seeing in the distribution and production of COVID-19 vaccines are symptomatic of an old geopolitical framework that is no longer working, no longer sustainable, and no longer acceptable.
Monkeypox has sickened people in parts of West and Central Africa since the 1970s. But it wasn't until the disease triggered unusual outbreaks in Europe and North America that public health officials even thought to use vaccines. Rich countries have stretched their vaccine supplies by using a fifth of the regular dose, but none have expressed interest in helping Africa. Since the WHO declared monkeypox a global emergency, Nigeria has seen the disease continue to spread with few significant interventions. Experts say even if rich countries start sharing monkeypox vaccines with Africa soon, they shouldn't be applauded. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Nigerians are looking forward to the 2023 elections for many and varied reasons. However, other people are interested in the elections and their outcomes for several reasons. Globalization and its ever-increasing tendency for interdependency of nations have brought to the fore the interests of global economic and power players in the Nigerian polls. Nigeria is at a crossroads and in a volatile state with heightened insecurity, insurgency, terrorist incursions, cessationist agitations, and a melting economic situation. So, will the much-anticipated polls bend the curve? Here's a report from Abuja.
The Nigerian political space is rife with activities in recent months, as the country is set to hold its 7th election since it returned to democratic governance 23 years ago. In the latest, Nigeria's opposition parties have alleged a conspiracy to use a secret court action to stop the use of the bimodal voter accreditation system machine in the 2023 general elections. The opposition coalition also claims to have uncovered voter registration fraud and a plot to sack the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission if he fails to stop the use of the electronic voting system. According to reports, a spokesperson of the opposition parties said their vigilance team, following credible intelligence, discovered the suit at the Owerri Federal High Court, where it was filed on the 24th of August. The opposition parties also displayed extracts of the National Voters Register, which it claimed were part of at least 10 million fake registrations done by one of the political parties. But it did not disclose the name of the political party. They alleged that the fictitious names were sourced from both within and outside Nigeria, including some African countries such as Ghana, Cameroon, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Togo, Guinea, Gambia, and countries outside Africa. In a quick response to WION, Nigeria's electoral umpire, Independent National Electoral Commission, debunked the accusation.
This election will be transparent, this election will be free, this election will be fair, this election will be inclusive, and this election will be will also be peaceful. No Nigerian will be disenfranchised in relation to this election. And we assure the Nigerian people that the Commission has the courage, the Commission has the creative power, that the Commission has the innovative disposition to continue to elevate the electoral process so that at the end of the day, Nigerians will celebrate our democracy, celebrate our electoral process, and be sure that we keep on competing within the Committee of Democracies without any fear or favor.
The general elections will be held in February to March 2023 to elect federal and state government executives and legislators for the next 4 years.
INEC official, the INEC boss, Yakub Mahmood, have called out on all supporters and political parties to ensure that campaigns are devoid of rancor, based truly on issues and not on ethnicity and the likes. Campaign proper starts on the 28th of September, and of course, we hope that all parties involved will make do their promises of a peaceful electioneering process.
The major contenders seem to have pitched themselves strategically to fit the leading narratives, from the Muslim ticket by the ruling All Progressive Party APC, which believes in the turn of a southerner to become president, but played down the popularity of the Nigeria society with the choice of a VP, another Muslim. The main opposition party, the PDP, however, picked a Muslim Christian ticket, pitched with a Southern Christian as VP, as it seems fair for a polarized country like Nigeria. Also of note is the supposed third force by the Labour Party candidate, who is young and touted to have more youthful supporters who are insisting on taking power from the older folk.
Ethnicity and religion will continue to play a very big role in Nigeria's electoral system because of the illiteracy level of the people. And again, the politicians have used that as a tool towards getting vote from the people, letting them know, when it's our turn for us to have whether to become a senator, a governor, or a president. And also the people, because of the level of illiteracy, sees that it's only true when you have their own person, either through religion or ethnicity, that development will come to their place. So definitely, as it stands now, as a young democracy, I think religion and ethnicity will continue to play a major role.
With a projected voter population of over 80 million, and with barely just 5 months to the much-touted 2023 elections in Nigeria, the polity is sure heated. From accusations to counter-accusations, from groups, coalitions, and political parties, to the ethnic and religious card being played by supporters of the major candidates. What will be the deciding factor for the emergence of the president of Africa's biggest economy? Only time will tell. Louisa Olaniyi, WION News, World is One.
Kenya has scrapped subsidy on petrol as soon as new President William Ruto was inaugurated. Ruto said subsidies were unsustainable in a move that could add to upward pressure on inflation. The new president faces challenge of bringing down the high cost of fuel and food in East Africa's most dominant economy. But he will also have to grapple with subsidy measures that policymakers warn could empty the country's coffers and debt inherited from his predecessor, Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. Here now is a report from Nairobi.
Help me God.
So help me God.
He is the new boss in town. Kenya's 5th president, William Ruto, acknowledged that there is a hard task ahead of him.
Among the central concerns of my government will be climate change. In our country, women and men, young people, farmers, workers, and local communities suffer the consequences of climate emergency. It is not too late to respond. To tackle this threat, we must act urgently to keep global heating levels below the 1.5 Celsius, help those in need, and end addiction to fossil fuels.
2 days after the inauguration, fuel prices in Kenya surged to record highs. Additional fuel price hikes are expected in the coming weeks and months. The price of petrol increased by 20 Kenyan shillings to nearly 180 Kenyan shillings per litre. The Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority announced the new price regime, which will remain in force until the 14th of October.
Now, with the increase in fuel prices, the cost of food must also go up. And that's where we will start feeling the pinch. Now that fuel relief, which used to be subsidized by the previous government, you get a new government and in 2 days you remove that subsidy? Now we don't know where we're headed as a nation. Can someone look into that issue, even if it means reinstating that subsidy? We better buy it at the previous price of $1.30 instead of the current $1.50. Now where do we go?
The removal of fuel subsidy is in line with the new administration's decree. Ruto had disclosed his concerns about the fuel subsidy, calling it cost ineffective and unsustainable. These price hikes come at a time when small-scale businesses and Kenyans are struggling with post-coronavirus economic difficulties, regional drought, and the high cost of wheat and fuel due to the war in Ukraine.
The way fuel has gone so high means everything, even maize flour, because everything depends on fuel for transport, so nothing will progress in Kenya. Things will be terrible if fuel prices remain this high.
Like in other parts of the world, Kenyan inflation soared to a 65-month high of 8.5% in August, mainly due to the knock-on effects of a jump in crude oil prices. It stood at around 5% at the start of 2022. The price of electricity, which is tied to the price of fuel, has also increased. In June, the Finance Ministry said Kenya could run out of funds to subsidize fuel costs if prices kept rising, pushing public debt to unsustainable levels. The International Monetary Fund, which is in a 38-month loan deal with Kenya, has given the country until next month to end the fuel subsidy to ease pressure on the national treasury. Bureau Report, World of Africa.
Campaigners say they have been given the constitutional right to grow and consume it, but trade remains a fundamental stumbling block. We are talking about cannabis production in South Africa. What is causing the agitation and friction in the country? Let's find out on this next report from Pretoria.
Hundreds of cannabis lobby groups and individuals came together across South Africa to express their frustration against the government on the approach, structure, and pace of cannabis law reform and legal regulation. In 2018, South Africa's Constitutional Court decriminalized personal consumption of cannabis by adults in private.
The effect of the judgment of this court is to decriminalize A, the use or possession of cannabis by an adult in private for that adult person's consumption in private.
But there are still many aspects of producing, possessing, transporting and selling that are still against the law.
The government's apathy and slow dealing of cannabis legislation in South Africa. Our legacy farmers still have no way of growing cannabis legally. We have lots of delays in legislation, and our economy essentially needs cannabis urgently for job creation and to stimulate the economy, especially after COVID. So there is no reason for it to be delayed. It's been 4 years on Sunday since the Constitutional Court ruling, and very little has moved forward. So we are calling on government to speed up and to take this industry seriously.
Cannabis, also known as marijuana or dacha, is one of the most controversial substances that see people divided about whether it is harmful or helpful. But in many rural parts of South Africa, there are certain groups who have been cultivating this plant for generations. There are still no solutions for rural legacy cannabis farmers who still remain criminals in the eyes of the law.
The president of the country is talking about an inclusive enabling cannabis legislative framework that will include what we call legacy farmers. We estimate there's between 40 and 60,000 of those, although the master plan talks about 900,000 farmers. These farmers have been farming cannabis for generations, for 150 or if not more years. They have relied on it as a source of income. They have put their kids through school, put food on the table. And the legalization from the Concord that has enabled cannabis for private use has really put these farmers under a lot of pressure.
According to World Health Organization, South Africa is the third largest illegal cannabis producer in the world, growing about 2,500 tons in a year. According to South Africa's Agriculture Department, the size of the local industry is estimated at 28 billion rand, or $1.9 billion US. The industry is also estimated to create as many as 130,000 jobs.
Cannabis is not just about puff, puff and pass. This industry has great potential to create employment and investment opportunities in South Africa. Therefore, it is hoped that the process to finalize the legalization goes smoothly and swiftly. This is Calden Olmo from Pretoria, South Africa, for WION The World is One.
After 3 years of COVID hiatus, Uganda's infamous music and dance festival is back. The Nyege Nyege Festival was a major hit this year. The extravaganza was hosted on the banks of Nile River and attracted over 10,000 visitors.
Vibrance, percussions, and unending adrenaline. Uganda's Nyege Nyege Festival is back with a bang. With nearly 300 artists lined up and 12,000 visitors, the raging music and dance fest is delivering on its name.
This is my first time and it's an experience, one-of-a-kind experience. East Africa and biggest, this is like the biggest event this side. So it's good to see many people from all over the world. Music, culture, fun, love.
The event began 5 years ago. It used to be held in Jinja before the pandemic hit. And this time, after a 2-year break and COVID restrictions in place, the scenery has changed, but the feel remains the same. This year, the action has shifted to the banks of the Nile River in eastern Uganda. The term Nyege Nyege means urge. It finds a rather sexual meaning in Swahili as well, a meaning that stands true to its notorious fame. The Ugandan authorities had initially imposed a ban on the music festival. There's a belief that the 4-day festival promotes sex, homosexuality, and drug use. The ban made international headlines. There was a public backlash, forcing the authorities to reverse the order. The government action could not stop the festival from going on. It did, however, achieve the opposite. Reading about the controversy on social media, hundreds of music enthusiasts flew in from across countries to witness the raw experience. This year's event comes against the backdrop of an economic crisis. From street hawkers to jewelry makers, small Ugandan businesses hope to lift their fortunes with the Nyege Nyege's massive footfall. Bureau Report, World of Africa.
And that is our time this week. Tell you what, do you have a story idea that you would like to watch on our show? Talk to us. Tweet at WION News with the hashtag World of Africa. Your story and where you're watching us from. We appreciate your feedback. Thank you for watching. I'm Eric Njoka. Goodbye for now.